Scary telling.
I never thought that a small, itchy blister could turn into one of the scariest experiences of my life. It started on the bottom of my feet, small, itchy patches that I initially dismissed as a minor skin condition. I thought that my skin was just being weird, and I threw some more patches on them and started moisturizing better. But as time went on, the blisters only got worse. They popped, got dry and scaly, and then started to spread all over my feet. I tried to ignore it and went to my doctor, who initially diagnosed me with plantar pustular psoriasis. It sounded nasty, but I thought it was something that could be easily treated. I got creams, daily medication, and joined groups to see some of the most disgusting looking pictures I'd ever seen. But as time went on, the blisters spread to the palms of my hands. I would say I had forgotten about my feet, but they had only gotten worse. Tiny little blisters that popped, then got dry and scaly and red and just spread. I took pictures and went to my doctor again, hoping for some answers. The doctor took a look at my hands, feet, and pictures, and then diagnosed me with something even nastier sounding, plantar pustular psoriasis. It was basically my life now, dealing with disgusting outbreaks of blisters all over my palms and the bottom of my feet. I was confused and scared. How could this have happened to me? Was there something I had done wrong? As the days went on, the blisters only got worse. I tried to treat them with different creams and remedies, but nothing seemed to work. I could feel something moving under my skin, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. I started to become more and more paranoid, wondering if there was something more sinister going on. My significant other tried to reassure me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I spent hours researching my symptoms online, looking for anything that might explain what was happening to me. That's when I came across the term myiasis. The more I read about myiasis, the more I became convinced that I had it. The symptoms matched up perfectly: the small, itchy blisters, the feeling of movement under my skin. I knew that I had to see a doctor as soon as possible, but I was terrified of what they might find. I remember lying in bed at night, feeling the blisters on my feet and hands pulsing with a strange energy. It was like something was alive under my skin, something that didn't belong there. I started to feel like I was losing my mind, like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. The blisters continued to spread, and I started to feel like they were consuming my entire body. I didn't want to leave my house, didn't want to go outside and face the world. I was scared and alone, and I didn't know if there was anything that could be done to help me. After discovering the term myiasis online, I became increasingly convinced that this was what I was suffering from. I booked an appointment with my doctor, determined to get some answers. As soon as I arrived at the doctor's office, I explained my concerns to them. They listened intently, but seemed skeptical. They told me that my symptoms were consistent with plantar pustular psoriasis and that I shouldn't worry. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I started to become more and more paranoid, checking my body for new blisters every few minutes. The feeling of something moving under my skin was becoming more pronounced, and it was starting to drive me crazy. I decided to seek out other medical opinions, hoping that someone would be able to give me the answers I was looking for. I went to different dermatologists and specialists, but none of them could explain the foreign movement in my hand. Some of them suggested that it might be a psychological issue, and that I should see a therapist. But I knew that this wasn't in my head. I could feel the blisters on my feet and hands pulsing with a strange energy, and I knew that something was alive under my skin. I became obsessed with finding out what it was, spending hours every day researching my symptoms online. One day, I came across a medical journal article that described a case of myiasis that was eerily similar to what I was experiencing. The article detailed how fly larvae could infest the human body through small cuts or openings, and how they could cause severe damage if left untreated. The more I read about myiasis, the more convinced I became that this was what was happening to me. I printed out the article and brought it with me to my next doctor's appointment, determined to convince them that something was seriously wrong. To my surprise, the doctor listened to me more carefully this time. They ordered a battery of tests and scans, hoping to find some answers. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I was finally going to get the answers I had been searching for. But as the days went on, the tests came back inconclusive. The doctors couldn't find anything out of the ordinary, and they started to suggest that maybe my symptoms were all in my head. I felt hopeless and alone, convinced that I was going to die from this strange affliction. I spent more and more time on online forums, looking for anyone who might have had a similar experience. I found a group of people who had suffered from myiasis, and I started to share my story with them. They listened to me and offered me support, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone in my struggle. But despite their encouragement, I knew that I was still no closer to finding a solution. The feeling of something wriggling under my skin continued to haunt me, and I knew that I couldn't give up my search for answers. As my condition continued to worsen, I started to fear that I would never find a cure. The blisters on my feet and hands were spreading rapidly, and I could feel something moving under my skin with increasing intensity. The doctors continued to be baffled by my symptoms, and I could tell that they were starting to lose hope. They had tried various creams and medications, but nothing seemed to make a difference. I felt like I was running out of time. One day, I woke up to find that the blisters on my hand had grown larger and more painful than ever before. I could feel something wriggling inside of them, and the sensation made me feel like I was going to be sick. I went to my significant other, who was horrified by what they saw. They suggested that we try to extract whatever was inside the blister using a pair of tweezers. I was hesitant at first, but I knew that I had to try something. As soon as the tweezers touched my skin, I felt a sharp pain shoot through my hand. But my significant other was determined, and they continued to prod and poke at the blister until something finally emerged. To my horror, a tiny worm-like creature wriggled out of the blister and onto my hand. I screamed and recoiled, my heart pounding with fear. This was not something that could be explained away with a simple diagnosis. I immediately went to the hospital, where the doctors finally confirmed that I was suffering from myiasis. Fly larvae had infested my body through small openings in my skin, and they had been multiplying and growing for months. The doctors explained that myiasis was a serious condition that could cause significant damage if left untreated. They told me that I would need to undergo a series of painful and invasive treatments to try and remove the larvae from my body. I felt overwhelmed and scared, but I knew that I had to do whatever it took to get rid of the infestation. The doctors started me on a course of antibiotics and painkillers, hoping to kill off as many of the larvae as possible. But despite the medication, I could still feel the larvae moving inside of me. It was like a constant wriggling sensation that never went away, a reminder of the horror that was unfolding inside of my body. The doctors suggested that I undergo surgery to try and remove the larvae more directly. I was scared, but I knew that I didn't have a choice. The infestation was taking over my life, and I needed to take drastic action to get rid of it once and for all. The surgery was one of the most painful experiences of my life. The doctors cut into my skin and extracted hundreds of larvae, some of which were as large as a pencil eraser. It was a gruesome and terrifying experience, but I knew that it was necessary to save my life. Even after the surgery, the infestation continued to spread. I could feel the larvae wriggling inside of me, causing me intense pain and discomfort. The doctors tried various medications and therapies, but nothing seemed to work. As the days went on, my health continued to deteriorate. I could feel my body weakening, and I knew that I was running out of time. I was terrified that I was going to die from this horrific affliction, a victim of a parasite that had invaded my body without warning or explanation. As my condition continued to worsen, I felt like I was in a race against time. The fly larvae infestation was taking over my body, and I knew that I needed to find a cure before it was too late. I consulted with numerous medical professionals, but none of them seemed to have any answers. They tried different medications and therapies, but nothing seemed to make a difference. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Desperate for a solution, I turned to alternative medicine. I tried acupuncture, herbal remedies, and even hypnosis, but nothing seemed to work. The wriggling sensation in my body was becoming more intense, and I could feel the larvae multiplying at an alarming rate. One day, while scrolling through online forums, I came across a post about a doctor who specialized in treating rare and unusual diseases. They claimed to have helped countless patients who had been failed by traditional medicine. I immediately booked an appointment with the doctor, hoping that they would be able to provide me with some answers. When I arrived at their office, I was surprised to find that it was located in a rundown part of town. But I was desperate, and I was willing to try anything. The doctor was an eccentric-looking individual with a wild beard and a piercing gaze. They listened intently as I described my symptoms, nodding thoughtfully as I spoke. Finally, the doctor spoke. "I believe that you are suffering from a rare strain of myositis," they said. "It's a condition that is caused by a particularly aggressive species of fly larvae. They are resistant to most medications, but I have developed a treatment that can kill them off." I felt a glimmer of hope. Finally, someone who understood what was happening to me. The doctor explained that their treatment involved a combination of herbal remedies and a special diet that would help to kill off the larvae. They warned me that it would be painful, but that it was the only way to save my life. I agreed to undergo the treatment, desperate for a cure. The doctor gave me a long list of foods and herbs that I needed to consume, along with a series of painful injections that would help to kill off the larvae. The first few days were excruciating. The injections caused my body to convulse with pain, and the herbal remedies made me feel nauseous and dizzy. But slowly but surely, I started to feel a difference. The wriggling sensation in my body became less intense, and I could feel the larvae dying off one by one. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but for the first time in months, I felt like there was hope. The treatment continued for weeks, and I slowly but surely started to feel like myself again. The blisters on my feet and hands started to disappear, and the wriggling sensation in my body became a distant memory. When I went back to the doctor for a checkup, they declared that I was free of the infestation. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had beaten the parasite that had invaded my body and threatened to take my life. I left the doctor's office feeling grateful and relieved. I knew that I had a long road to recovery ahead of me, but I was finally on the right path. I had faced one of the scariest and most disturbing experiences of my life, but I had emerged stronger for it. After my long and painful battle with myositis, I was left feeling traumatized and vulnerable. The experience had shaken me to my core, and I knew that I needed to take steps to move forward and rebuild my life. The first thing I did was seek out therapy. I knew that I needed to process the trauma that I had experienced and work through the anxiety and fear that still lingered inside of me. My therapist helped me to confront the demons that had haunted me for months, and slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. I also made a point of reconnecting with my loved ones. The experience had been isolating and terrifying, and I knew that I needed the support of the people who cared about me. My significant other had been by my side throughout the ordeal, and I was grateful for their unwavering support and love. Together, we started to rebuild our lives. We went on walks, tried new hobbies, and made a point of celebrating the small victories. I started to feel like I had a future again, and that there was hope for a life beyond the trauma. But even as I worked to move forward, the memories of the infestation continued to haunt me. I would have nightmares about the wriggling sensation in my body, and sometimes I could swear that I could still feel the larvae moving inside of me. It was a slow and painful process, but over time, I started to regain my sense of self. I learned to live with the scars that the infestation had left behind, and I made a point of taking care of my body and my mind. Looking back on the experience, I knew that it had changed me forever. It had shown me just how fragile life can be and how important it is to cherish every moment that we have. It had also taught me the power of resilience and the importance of never giving up, no matter how dire the circumstances. As I sat in my therapist's office, reflecting on everything that had happened, I knew that I had emerged from the darkness stronger and wiser than ever before. The infestation had been a nightmare, but it had also been a crucible that had forged me into the person that I was today. I left the therapist's office feeling hopeful and grateful. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but I also knew that I had the strength and resilience to overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. The infestation had been one of the scariest and most disturbing experiences of my life, but it had also been a reminder of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most terrifying of obstacles.